Thank you, thank you. I don't need to do my talk now. They've told you everything we need to know. So yeah, fantastic. I'm going to talk to you today about Netlify Graph. I am a recovering engineer, but I promise for this audience I'm not going to go super technical. I'm just going to give you some of the benefits to your business, the benefits to your developers, and if you are a developer, you can probably find me at coffee time and we can talk a bit more of the tech. As Phil kindly mentioned, I work very heavily in the integration space at Netlify. The ecosystem is about all of our ecosystem. It's about our integrators, our partners, the frameworks that you want to run on Netlify, everything. We want to make that as frictionless as possible for you. And why am I a good person to talk to you about this? Well, as a recovering, mostly recovered engineer, I've worked on and with many APIs, many platforms. I've had great experiences. I've had things work really well. I've been able to make it nice for my customers, where handling error states, not having to fall over and things like that. I've also had some not so good experiences where the documentation doesn't match the reality. The things that I'm supposed to be able to do, I can't do. And we don't want any of you to have that pain. So at Netlify, we're definitely working to solve some of this for you. We have over 2.5 million developers on our platform, which means that we can learn a lot of patterns, a lot of things that people want to do. We regularly speak to folks, even pandemic times, might not have been in the same room, but we do like to talk to folks to learn from them. So, it's now an API-first economy. I mean, these whole 2 days have been talking about plugging things together. But, we have things on Netlify, we have Netlify functions, we have things on the edge now. There's APIs for everything. And actually that's great, because you can pick any three from this slide of all of these things and plug them together and get something very different, for example. As has been said in the intro, though, there's a lot of glue code. We need to do some authentication, potentially, some stuff, maybe not. If you just do public querying, maybe not. If it's your e-commerce system, you almost certainly want to authenticate. You don't want people doing nefarious things with your products and data. You then need to find the right data. What's right for you as a developer when you're building it versus one of your customers versus then another of customers, probably very different. So you need to deal with all those potential possibilities. And then you need to aggregate that data and get it into the front end. In the kind of smaller text along there, there's things that the developers would do. You have to learn what each API does. You have to use Postman or POR or curl requests or tool of choice to figure stuff out. And you have to make multiple requests to different endpoints to work out what's going on or to bring things together. That's okay, you say. I can do that. That's my job. I write this code. But it's not going to be so great when you have several APIs, and there's only 3 here. We didn't want to overload the slide. Realistically, you could have 5, 10 APIs, depending on how sophisticated your front end was going to be in terms of the actual transaction platform or the reviews, how you take payments, where you're pulling your product data from, where you might be pulling other website data from, and so forth. And that complexity, with 3, it's kind of okay. 5 to 10, not so much, especially if you're not a big company, you can't have a team on each integration. So this is one of the things that we're trying to solve with Netlify Graph. We want to make it a lot more seamless for your developers, or you as a developer, to connect to things. We want to make it easy for you to explore what that API looks like, what the data returned looks like, what you might want to then use in your building your sites. There's a lot, well, as a developer, if you're writing code, you kind of enjoy doing some of the plugging things together, making it work, getting that first step done. But then once you've done it once, you don't want to do it 3, 4, 5, 6 times over, because by this point, you want to be starting putting things together. So if we can do the authentication with one of these services and then join the rest up for you in one place, that's going to make your lives a lot easier. If you split your development so that your front-end people get given the data and then build from there, and you've had back-end people provide that data, then that's all going to be in one place for them with Netlify Graph, and they can just work off that data, that JSON structure. And we also want to help the developers here, which helps the businesses move faster, is that we generate some of this code for you. And we generate type-safe functions. We're doing that even with JavaScript, not just TypeScript, with the things that we develop. So, for example, this very small, simple part of a web page would work well on mobile as well. 4 different APIs. It's all relatively seamless. Your front-end engineers have all of that information in one place. They haven't had to call the CMS, deal with the fact that the CMS might not have the right information. The transactional layer, it's very easy to say, well, this is $199, or if they can't get that information, or it's out of stock, or whatever, it's just all pulled together in one sort of place for folks.
I'm going to go over the new Netlify Graph experience.
So here's a 4-minute demo of how quickly you can integrate these things.
So here I have my list of sites, and I'm going to go straight into the graph, and this is going to load up my graph workshop. Now, inside of my workshop, it's going to guide me through the steps necessary to actually interact with one of these APIs. On my left, I have a list of services that I can scroll through, and I can take a look at them, and I can see that they offer an API or authentication. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to Shopify, and I'm going to turn on the API. Now, I've turned on the API, and I could just dive into creating GraphQL operations. If I'm very good at this, I can just go ahead and do this myself. However, that can often be very intimidating. So what we allow people to do is to actually submit examples for how to use an API. In this case, a common example might be I want to just get a list of the products that I have on my service. Now, this is going to take an existing GraphQL example and actually generate a really nice human-oriented form to use it. I get a lovely description of what this does, including all the markdown highlighting that you might expect. And I can come through here. I say maybe I want to get the first 20. Now, based off of the introspection of the types inside of this query, we actually generate a very customized form. So, for example, for an enum, we can actually just go ahead and generate a dropdown. So this makes it very easy to explore and actually generate the exact values that a query might be looking for. Now, I could, for example, sort by price, but in this case, I'll go ahead and leave it just the best selling. And I'm not going to reverse the results. If I run this, I immediately get prompted to say, hey, you actually haven't logged in yet. The first step to accessing one of these APIs normally is to log in. I'll come in here, and I'll fill out my store name. And when I come back and I run this again, I immediately get my data in. So I already have data coming in from the Shopify API. Now we also make it so that you can actually share example variables as well. So there may be cases where there are lots of common use cases that you want to pre-fill out for the user. So in this case, for example, creating a new customer inside of the Shopify site. In this case, I've said, well, here's an example of valid data that you can use if you don't want to actually fill this in yourself. However, going back to my first query, I'll go ahead and run this. And if I like this and I want to use this inside of my site or my application, I can go ahead and just save this. It is immediately added to my library, along with all the data that I have here. I can come in here and I can start editing. Change to maybe I want to sort by price. I can rerun that and I get my data back immediately. Of course, I can also create my own custom mutations, my own custom subscriptions and queries, and they all stay inside of my library. Now that I got some data back and I've actually created and added some elements to my library, there's a question of how do I actually use this? What is this going to look like whenever I'm consuming this from my JavaScript or my TypeScript application? We can come in here and actually edit things like the title and the description, and we have full Markdown support in here. And so we get an example of what is this actually going to look like whenever we're using this from, say, for example, VS Code. So I'll go ahead and save this. And now I have a list of my operations that I want to do inside of Shopify. I'm able to get the data back and actually confirm that this is exactly what I want. And now I just need to get this inside of my code. Coming up here, we can see that we just need to install the Netlify CLI. And go ahead and run this prompt locally inside of our application. And this is going to synchronize this library locally with the code that I'm working on. Now, pasting this into my terminal and opening the code, I see my app is running here. So now that I've actually connected my CLI to my local application, I can actually do even more things. For example, I'm using this inside of a Next.js application, but I may not be sure how to set up the boilerplate in order to actually do that. So I can go ahead and come here and say, and if I actually go into my application, come in here and I can see that it has actually generated a TypeScript file with all of the operations that I generated earlier, including detailed descriptions at each step along the way.
So that was 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Do you want your developers to be, that was real-time recording as well, achieve all of that, or as a developer, do you want to achieve all of that? Obviously, Sean is on the team that built this stuff, so he's super familiar, but honestly, it won't take any of you any more than 10 minutes. You also won't get that UI. This is a super sneak preview that is coming to labs very, very soon, but we made sure we could get this demo out to you. But definitely reach out to us at Netlify or the booth downstairs in the coffee or the event folks after the event if you want to get in touch. And we would love to talk to you more about what you could do with Netlify Graph and to help speed up your own development cycles. Thank you.